Summarizing Chapter 2 of Giddens et al. Introduction to Sociology. Asking and answering sociological questions. The learning objectives from this chapter is to learn about the steps in the research process, be able to identify different types of questions sociologists address in their research, to be able to contrast Parks and Ogburn's vision of sociology as a science, and to influence and to understand their influence on contemporary sociological research, to be able to familiarize yourselves with the methods available to sociological researchers, and to understand how research methods generate controversies and ethical dilemmas for sociologists. There are two main types of methods in doing sociological research. One is quantitative and one is qualitative. Quantitative approaches sociological research and it draws on objective and statistical data and often focus on documenting trends, comparing subgroups, or exploring correlations. Qualitative methods, on the other hand, approaches sociology, sociological research that often relies on personal and or collective interviews, accounts, or observations of a person or situation. The research process. There's 7 steps to the research process. The steps include defining the research problem, reviewing the lit, making the problem precise, working out a design, actually carrying out the research, interpreting the results, and reporting the findings. In looking at the definition of the research problem, all research starts with a research problem. Rather than just answering the question, what is going on here? Skilled researchers try to illuminate why events happen as they do. In reviewing the literature, once a research problem is identified, the sociologist now must review related research. In other words, questions asked include: have previous researchers looked at this problem before? What have been their findings? Has anything been left unanalyzed? Then we have making the problem precise, and that is done through a concept called hypothesis. And a hypothesis is simply an educated guess about a given state of affairs put forward as basis for empirical testing. The next step is working out a design. Here, the researcher decides how to collect the research material. They can choose from a range of methods based on the study objectives and the aspects of behavior under study. Then there's the carrying out of the actual research. During the actual research, here, sometimes there are unforeseen practical difficulties that may arise that may force the researcher to think or rethink his or her initial strategy. Once the research is done, now comes a task of interpreting the result. Once information is gathered, the researcher must analyze the data, track the trends, and test the hypothesis. Results must be interpreted in such a way that they tell a clear story and directly address the research puzzle outlined in the first step. Finally, reporting of the findings. This report is usually published either as a journal article or a book, and it provides an account of the research question, the methods, the findings, and the implication of the research for social theory, for public policy, or for practice. Two main scholars in determining the research process includes Robert Park and William Ogburn. Park wanted to make sure that social research remains more scientific than anything else, as he thought that theory should be based on a careful accumulation of evidence about people's lives. Ogburn wanted to make social research more like the natural sciences by measuring things quantitatively. He believed that sociologists could study anything that could be measured in numbers. Asking and answering sociological questions today via research methods. So there are different types of research methods. There's ethnographic, there's surveys, there are experiments, and comparative research. Ethnographic research basically allows the researcher to immerse him or herself in the community of study and study the community from within. Surveys looks at it's a sociological research where questionnaires are administered to the population being studied, and it generally produces information less detailed than that produced by an ethnographic research, but the information produced can be generalized to the population as a whole. Experimental research looks at variables that can be analyzed in a controlled and systematic way, either in an artificial situation constructed by the researcher or in a naturally occurring setting. In a typical experiment, people are divided into two groups, an experimental group and a control group. Then we have comparative research, and comparative research is comparing one set of findings on one society with the same type of findings on another society. Research in social research is prone to exploitation. How do sociologists avoid that? They must consider whether the research poses risks to subjects that are greater than the risk to those subjects would face in their everyday lives. For example, researchers in areas with high crime rates may risk getting themselves or their subjects arrested as a result of their participation or writings. Can we really study human social life in a scientific way? Well, unlike natural phenomenon in animals, humans are self-aware beings who confer sense and purpose to what they do. Empirical investigation. These are factual inquiries carried out in any area of sociological study. One of the pros is that sociologists can pose questions directly to their subjects. One of the cons is that people who are aware that their activities are being scrutinized may not behave normally. Another chapter, as presented by Giddens et al., the 12th edition, um, as printed by Norton and Company. Thank you. Bye bye.